If you love the West Tigers as much as we do, and that's an awful lot, you're welcome to come and join us in our discussions on the West Tigers podcast forum. Our forum is the #1 forum for West Tigers fans to talk everything West Tigers. westtigerspodcast.com.au/forum. We hope to see you there soon.
West Tigers podcast episode number 413, joined by Steve and Declan on a Wednesday. I was going to say a Wednesday night, Declan, but we're doing a very family-friendly time today, 5:30 p.m. we're recording.
Yeah, Gary and Nick, they like to record podcasts at 12 o'clock at night, and, you know, the people that have normal jobs like to be in bed by that time, so I appreciate everyone moving the pod to 5:30. I think it's great for my sleep habits. Thank you.
Yes, I don't deny that, Declan, but I do know that you told me that there's a rugby game on tonight, apparently. I don't really follow rugby, but what's on?
Yeah, the British and Irish Lions have started their tour to Australia, so I'm very excited for that. They're playing the Reds tonight, 8 o'clock kickoff. So it's good. It's a nice change of pace where I'm going into a rugby game expecting my team to win. So I can't say that I'm not excited for it, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment, I think.
You think the Reds will win?
Oh, no, I don't think the Reds will win. I'm going for the Lions, and I think they'll put a score on them. So,
well, I'm sure that'll be a huge game. I can't say I'll be tuning in. Steve, do you delve far off the rugby league and cricket landscape, or not really in sports?
No, not at all. Not at all these days. I used to enjoy rugby. When I was younger, I'd get up for if there were test matches on in the middle of the night and that sort of thing, but I haven't for a long time. They've just changed the rules and it's just so boring.
I don't think anyone knows the rules in rugby when the ref blows a penalty, but this is not a rugby podcast, boys. It's West Tigers midweek podcast. We will preview the Roosters game and we'll try and do Yachty's quiz at the end as well, but we've got a fair bit of stuff to get through. There was a Michael Chalmers article, Declan, that dropped about 3 o'clock this afternoon. I'm just going to paraphrase some of that and going to get your guys' reaction to it. The headline was West Tigers promised things would change, but it's starting to look like the same old story. Chalmers rehashed some old quotes from Shane Richardson when he joined the club, which was basically saying clubs win premierships when they bring through their juniors. We have to make it clear to everyone, we're not a recruitment club, we're a development club. This club, and I'm paraphrasing this, let players go around 7 years ago and we've never recovered. He then goes on to talk about a bit about Talon Silva, which we'll go into later separately. But the Chalmers article focuses on the fact that Marshall has basically backed Api Coruscant, a strong relationship with his senior players. But in terms of selecting coaches, he's rarely looked outside his sort of inner circle in terms of players that he played with in 2005. And there's a feeling in the dressing room, according to Chalmers, that the coach favours certain players or there are different cliques developing. And perhaps the Tigers have compromised their long-term future in terms of backing Benji with some of these signings rather than looking at the long-term. The last bit was interesting. I mean, it's easy to be flippant about it, but he actually describes the fact a couple of weeks ago that apparently, I'm trying not to laugh when I say this, that Marshall actually tackled Adam Dewey and maybe sent him crashing to the ground, and there was an altercation after that. And the fact that he regularly joins in opposed sessions, plays for the reserve grade team against the first grade team, which I think has been well known over the past 18 months, and that there is a concern that he doesn't know what sort of behaviour is, well, where the line is between being a player and being a coach and what's acceptable. Steve, I'll start with you on this one. A few people texted me and said there's going to be a big investigation into West Tigers. I got to be honest, I didn't get any great revelations out of this. Looks like he's rehashing some old quotes, and basically Benji backs his senior players. Shock horror, what a horrible thing to do as a coach. And Richo backs Benji, even though Benji's not right all the time. And Benji likes to join into training. They were my 4 main points I got out of it.
Yeah, I think Chalmers maybe sat down this morning and there wasn't a lot happening. I thought, well, what can I write about regarding West Tigers, because that'll always get some attention. And he's put together, the main points of what's happened over the last couple of weeks and turned it into another article, and how he got his mate, the Mole, to put all those socials out saying breaking news and huge story about to drop and all this rubbish, because it was rubbish, right? There's stuff in there to discuss for sure, but there was nothing earth-shattering. There was nothing groundbreaking. It was just, in my opinion, more clickbait from a journalist who had nothing better to do.
Declan, did you learn anything from the article?
No, not really, except that, as you said, Adam Dewey got folded by Benji Marshall. That was the only thing I really took away from that. But yeah, I said in the group chat before that I'm not a huge fan of Michael Chamis. I'm not really a huge fan of any rugby league journalists. I just think the whole environment is so toxic, and if you like to get them on side, you have to give them access, and if you don't give them access, then they absolutely go at you. They attack your character. This is the second kind of big article that Michael Chamis has wrote in relation to Benji not being a good coach. He said that that was the reason why Galvin ultimately decided to leave the club, was because of fears that Benji Marshall wasn't a good coach. And I think the thing that's extra kind of slimy about it as well is they always draft the article as someone else is saying it, when it's probably just their opinion, or maybe they've talked to someone, I don't know. But it's quite clear that that's Chamis' opinion, that he doesn't think that Benji Marshall is a good coach, and he just kind of weaselly tries to make it seem like it's not coming from him, it's coming from someone within this club. That he doesn't name anyone, it's an anonymous source, and I don't respect that at all. It's just crazy in a professional environment. You can just write anything you want, and you don't have to back it up at all. It's crazy to me, coming from a legal background. I just find that gobsmacking. So yeah, I didn't really learn anything in relation to it. I think we all know these kind of elements of Benji's coaching have been out there. I think it's probably fair enough to attack his record as a coach, because at the end of the day, that's what he's there to do. He's there to win games. But to just say all this stuff about how he joins in at training and he runs plays, I just don't really see how it has anything to do with us winning and losing on the weekend. I'm sorry. If you want to say he's a bad coach, then go for it. There's plenty of evidence this season of us struggling and us making mistakes. But I don't see why the media is obsessed with going back to this thing of him picking up a ball and running drills at training. It doesn't make sense to me.
Because they take the one story, Declan, that maybe 3, 4, 6 months ago someone wrote, and it got a bit of momentum, and they saw that story got momentum, so they just rehashed the same thing over and over and over again in the hope that it will also, their story will pick up momentum. How many times have we heard this stuff about Benji Marshall being involved in training? I've heard this before. Brad Arthur, Michael Maguire used to do the fitness with the players and beat a lot of them. So what? Right? Okay, there needs to be separation from player and coach. Absolutely there does. But that doesn't mean the bloke can't get involved in, hands-on sessions out on the field.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, boys. I will say, Declan, I generally agree with you. Your wide premise there that journalists, I don't have a lot of time for a lot of them. I will say that Michael Chamis is one I do. I don't know the guy at all, never spoken to him, never met him in my life, but I will say he stood up to Phil Gould in that one a couple of months ago, and I think generally he's pretty fair and he's accessible to the fans, at least on his social media stuff, which a lot of them are not. I know Steve's had dealings with ones in the past that won't even reply. You don't agree?
Well, just on that Phil Gould thing, everyone says that Michael Chamis stood up to him, but in the actual interview, he qualified his opinion by saying that, Phil, you're 3 steps ahead of everyone. You obviously knew what was happening. So he was clearly sucking up to him.
But that's sometimes that's the tactic to, give someone a compliment, then hammer them down. That's a fairly smart play for me.
But that's the level, the expectation we have on these journalists to ask journalistic questions that have integrity. Like, it's just so low that he asks Bill Gould a non-softball question, and then everyone just praises him for being some sort of like emblem of like journalistic integrity. When in actuality, like, he fair play to him, he did ask a question, and like he asked it to someone who's on the same side of the Fairfax, News Corp feud. So like, credit to him for that. But I wouldn't say like he put him on the spot, or like he roasted him in a way that I think if this was another sport from another country, like, Gould would have gotten so much worse. So I give him a little bit of credit, but I don't give him a ton of credit like a lot of people do. I think that I agree a little bit with you. I think he's better than a lot of other people, but like, there's still things that he writes that I have a problem with, and I don't think he should be someone who's like, people just like, oh, he's the good one, like Michael Champion. Because he just plays the same game as everyone else. Like, it's just like, you give me access, otherwise I'm going to flog you in my articles, and that's the same as all of them, in my opinion.
The fired up Declan tonight. I love this Declan. He's back. He's back and he's fired up. Steve, just breaking down little bits of the article I want to touch on. Look, if we're all going to be prisoners of quotes we made 18 months ago, we'd all be dead and buried. So I don't want to hammer Shane Richardson for the fact that he came in and he said that, premierships are won through local juniors, and, we want to make it clear to everyone we're not a recruitment club, we're a development club. But I don't really understand that line of recruitment club, development club. I think we need to throw it out and put it in the bin, because surely the good clubs, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, just have to be both. They have to be ruthless, they have to be balanced, they have to be winning clubs. And I think, unfortunately, with some of these quotes, and I don't want to hammer him, but it sort of backed him into a corner.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, I think if you're a development club, it goes without saying that you are still going to recruit from the outside. I just think that, I think that the problem with all these terminology is in the actual meaning of the terminology, right? And so if you're a development club, it doesn't mean you don't recruit. It just means that you mix your squad with outside players and inside players, I would say. And that's the same, I suppose, if you're a recruitment club. It's just what you do more of. So I think you're right. I think you're right. But, with Richo, I said the other day, when we all said it on the pod, we were dumbfounded, right? We were dumbfounded with the De Silva situation, and none of us seemed to be able to understand or see a reasoning as to why he was let go so early. Considering the position it's left us in, which has made the fan base quite volatile, really. But we don't know the whole situation. I'm not going to bag him over the Galvin situation. I've said before, I think he handled the Galvin situation pretty much spot on. I don't know what else he could have done. I don't know what else the club could have done in the Galvin situation. So I think to use that against him is pretty poor. The De Silva, yeah, I've got questions about that, but I don't know the inner workings either.
Well, let's go straight to the De Silva quotes that Richo, I think, put out a day or two ago, and we'll circle back to maybe Chalmers' article and a little bit on Benji's future. But Declan, some of his quotes were basically, I told the family we would not hold him back if we re-signed Appy. The kid wants to play NRL, and I think he can. We had to make a decision for the betterment of the club. We want to win games now. But we don't want to string him along for another 2 or 3 years waiting to play first grade. Again, I'll stress these are not direct quotes. It's paraphrasing a lot of his quotes. He said there's too much money in our hooking ranks. I think that would probably be understandable to be spending $1.35 million on 2 hookers and having a backup hooker on considerable money for next year. This is the big one for me. By letting him go, it gives us little bit of extra money in our cap, or we save a little bit of extra money this year, but we save a significant amount of money next year. This was the best decision for all. You were fired up about this a couple of days ago, and I think for the same reasons that we were. Not that the fact that Talon won't be here in 2027, but the fact that he's already training with Parramatta and he's gone and he's out the window. And the fact that Richo's come out and the best he could offer for me is that we're saving a little bit of money in our cap this year. Is that going to wash with fans, and is that fair enough reason?
I don't think it'll wash with the fans, and I think that's fair enough as well. I think it's a poor excuse to spin what's happened because like I understand that we think that Appy's the best option going forward. Like even though he's a little bit older, we think that we're the best chance of winning. And on that basis, we're not going to re-sign De Silva. And unfortunately, De Silva made it pretty clear that he wasn't happy to play second fiddle to Appy. I think that's incredibly disappointing on its own, considering he's only a 20-year-old local junior coming through. But that's for the birds now. Unfortunately, the thing that I just don't understand is that why is he gone now? We are the only club in the NRL that would do this, like give away a perfectly good player who can play first grade, like at the June 30 deadline. I don't know any other club that did it. If you look at all the other outgoings from clubs, they're fringe New South Wales Cup players that the clubs was willing to release. Look at Newcastle. I mean, like with Kai Pierce-Paul. I mean, he's leaving next year, and like we made inquiries about getting him like at before the June 30 deadline because we like obviously he's coming next year. We want to get him early, but then Newcastle were just like, well, no, because he helps us winning this year, so we're going to keep him. And I just don't understand why we've done this. It's insane. And now we've got Tristan Hope starting 9 against the Roosters, a game that like is absolutely must win if you don't already believe that the season's over. And it's just crazy. Like to save like a little bit of money this year, like fair enough, release him next year. Like I trust the coaching staff to make that decision if they don't think he's going to be like a long-term benefit for the club, or at least short-term next season. That's fair enough. But just to release him for nothing when like there's so much pressure on the club. And then what really annoyed me was the quotes about how from Richardson about how like it was a good thing because they were honest with like Talon, honest with his family, like dead right by him. Well, that's great for Talon. Like I'm sure that he's feeling really good about the situation now because he got exactly what he wants. But now the club is in trouble. And Richardson's employed to represent the best interests of the club, and that includes in the short term. And I think just like I'm just pegging back on Steve's point as well, where every year we just seem to release players just to free up salary cap room. And I understand if it's like a bad contract, like it's an old player, like who's probably not performing on the field, but we have genuine need for him. And not only that, we've given him to a Western Sydney rival in the Parramatta Eels, and we've given Galvin to the Bulldogs. And as Steve said, I understand why the club would want to get Galvin out as soon as possible, so I don't hold a grudge against them for that. But Talon, there didn't seem to be a problem with at least keeping him till the end of the year. I just don't understand. And like it just seems like we're here to help other clubs at this point. And I made the joke on the group chat, like maybe the Penrith would want to find our brothers. Like, why not just give it to them? Because we're just in the business of helping out other teams. Because Parramatta are going to be in the same position for us, potentially fighting for the wooden spoon. So I just don't understand why we would give them a leg up for literally nothing.
Wow, is there any tape left? That's a rant and a half, Declan. I've forgotten what I was going to say. No, I haven't. Just on your point about giving him up for nothing, and I agree, mate, and I agree with, and I empathise with you that the level of frustration coming through your voice, because we were all the same the other night in the pod. I think we had a chance on that pod to sort of get that frustration out, and you haven't as yet. So I do agree with you 100%. The only thing I can say is that it just can't be for nothing. There must be something we don't know, and we're not privy to, And I don't know whether this is the club's inability to manage young talent properly, but perhaps his attitude of, if you're going to re-sign Appy, I'm going to walk, coming from a bloke who's played, I don't know how many first grade games he's played, not many, with the experience that he's got. Maybe that attitude permeates through everything he does, and maybe the way he is around the group, and it was seen to be more damaging if he stays than if they let him go. Now, I'm just throwing things up here. I don't know. I'm just throwing it up as a possible, plausible explanation, because I don't understand, or I don't believe that we could give him away for nothing. There must have been something.
I mean, I completely accept the point that if he's leaving, he's a young player. There's no point keeping him next year to develop him for another club. Therefore, he's on a lot of money, and we should release him. But I just can't understand why we're getting rid of him like right now. Like why he had to go right before June 30 with no material benefit to us. Because like realistically, most of his salary would have been paid anyway. So I challenge that like if we actually save that much money on the cap. And then the second point is this is just a prime example for the other young players that, you know, if you want to leave, then they'll like the Tigers will just accommodate you. Like I know that it's true that there's nothing like our contract doesn't mean much these days in the NRL, and that's true across the board in every NRL team. But I do think the better clubs do a better job of massaging these kind of situations. So now, like I don't know, like say someone like Makasini, the young centre coming through, like if he just blitzes it next year in first grade, and then he's just like, well, I see myself like at a higher club, then you know he's got the blueprint to like just get out because he's learnt that behaviour from the other young players coming through that he no doubt has connections with. So it's just bad precedent all the way around, no matter how you look at it.
And Steve, it's sort of tricky one because it's very easy to lump on and you know group them together. Galvin and De Silva both gone for nothing to West Sydney rivals. I think the fan base, I don't want to speak for everyone, but generally there was you know half a pass for Shane Richardson in regards to the Galvin situation because it was so toxic and it was created by their camp. And perhaps he was hamstrung legally, and I'm sure there were things behind the scenes that he can't say that would maybe embarrass the club or embarrass Benji or embarrass someone that he just can't say. But this one, for me, he's not getting as much leeway with because the quotes are there. It gives us a little bit of extra money in our cap. Not only do we save a bit of money this year, but what is like we didn't get someone come through the door for June 30. We had a couple of players sneakily added to the player profiles who I assumed have gone up to top 30 contracts because you have to fill your 30 on a Monday morning. Maybe they're trying to upgrade a couple of players for this year who've got the shits. I don't know, but for me, that was a little bit wishy-washy, that reason from Richo. It just didn't seem to hit.
Yeah, look
I'm not a salary cap expert. None of us are.
No, that's for sure. Look, I think Joel made this point before. He said the other night in the pod that the thing that was upset him the most was not what happened, but the way it happened and the lack of communication. And maybe the fan base does need to be communicated to more openly and transparently because Richo has said to us in the past that he wants to be honest and transparent and open, and he talked about membership numbers and how, it wasn't as honest as it could have been, and he wanted to be more honest about it. Well, maybe we do need, not saying he's being dishonest at all, but maybe he does need to be more transparent and more open with the fan base. And I think you're right, mate. The fan base have given him and the club a lot of slack. We always do. We always give the club a lot of slack and support. We bounce back pretty well, but as I said the other night, it just doesn't take much for the fan base to turn because it's just been disappointment after disappointment. But I do want to flip the narrative just a little bit. And again, we've spoken about this before, not this year so much. And I agree, we all have a right to be angry and dirty with what's happened with Galvin and De Silva. And I'll go back to Stefano as well. But I'm going to bring up the point again. At what point do we, as a club, take responsibility for the fact that all these people want to walk out the door? At what point do we say we need to develop a culture of winning and win more football games than we do, and a culture and an environment where these young kids believe that they're in the best place or one of the best places in the NRL to develop their game and to succeed? Because we've been losing for far too long, and we've been losing talent for far too long, sometimes generational talent. And you talk about, developing players, we develop them, and if they're any good, they go. And there's a history of that. You cannot deny that. It's a fact. We bring players in, and historically the vast majority of them underachieve. Now, I think that's changing. I think the people we've brought in this year, for the most part, are doing great, playing great football. But if we keep losing, will we see it happen again, where these recruits we brought in this year are going to start looking at greener pastures elsewhere? I'll ask you guys, do we need to take more responsibility for the way our roster looks?
I mean, absolutely. I think just as like a kind of macro point, I think that now that we've had a few, tough games and a few injuries, just how the lack of depth has just completely exposed that we just don't really have enough first grade players in the top 30 squad to compete. I think it shows that, absolutely the squad needs to be better, and that falls on the management of the club. But just on Talon himself, I mean, he would have been at the club since he was 13 years old in terms of some sort of like development pathway. So he's been with the Tigers for a really long time. And it's kind of scary to me that someone who's been in the pathways from Campbelltown could just so easily leave. Like, pretty much like the saga, like it was bubbling away in the background for a while, but like just how quickly it happened, where he's just, well, I'm gone now because I've got a better opportunity. And what, like, Jamis talks about how local juniors, you bring through local juniors, and that wins you premierships. And a big reason for that is that local juniors come through, they have a connection and add an affinity with the club where they're willing to stay and take slight unders. Like, look at the Premier system, look at Manly back in the day as well, with their players, the Stewart brothers. But with our players, it's kind of the opposite, where like they come through because it's in their best interest, with Galvin, with De Silva. But then as soon as they hit first grade at that young age, it just seems that there's just no kind of like willingness or like desire to like turn the club around. Like, it is a very individualistic point of view, and I'm not in their heads. I don't know their perspective, so I'm not going to come down too critically on them. But it's just really alarming, Steve, and it's just to your point that we have to look at our pathways and like how we brought these players through and ask, why do they feel this way? Like, why are they so willing to jump ship at the first opportunity? Like, why don't they want to turn this club around? Why don't they see themselves long term at this club? And I think we probably know a lot of the answers, but I think it goes a lot deeper, and probably like it requires the kind of access that we don't have as to why De Silva was so eager to leave. Like, immediately, it turned out.
Well, I think you're right. I think we probably do know a lot of the answer. To a lot of it is success on the football field, right? And creating a successful club. That's the answer. But I think if you want to talk about macro, the macro side of it is our society, right? It's the society we live in. And I think there are less and less young people willing to work hard to turn something around and change, because we live in a society in an era where you can get so much instantly without a lot of effort, right? And I'm not saying people don't put effort in, people do, but you can achieve and get what you want quickly in this world. Whereas maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, and people had a mindset of heads down, bums up, work hard to achieve. I think we're losing that mindset. And therefore, if a better option presents itself, they take it. Now, someone my age, I find that really hard to grasp. Someone your age, Declan, probably finds it easier. Someone 10 years younger than you would find it easier still, I reckon. I don't know. That's probably a bit philosophical for our pod.
But if you look at where Talon's went, like, he went to the Eels, though. Like, it's not like they're a sure thing to be a top 4 team within the next
that's true
3 years. And they've re-signed that Riley Smith as well.
Talks. He got a good offer.
But like, it's crazy. Because with Galvin, like, he ultimately, it made, like, as much as I hated the situation, it made sense because like the Bulldogs were coming first. Like, Serraldo's a great coach. I think Jason Rouse has proved himself to be a good coach as well. Maybe not great yet, but like, it just doesn't seem like it's a better situation for him. So maybe you're right, Eddie. Maybe it was just money. But I'm happy to hear Steve's philosophical points on a Wednesday night.
I will say, Steve, might be a little bit of a rant I'm going on, but you mentioned, young people a little bit different. And I think that's fair, and that's common knowledge across all walks of life at the moment. But you mentioned, should we look at our environment and what we're doing for young players? The short answer is yes. And obviously winning and success and the brand helps. But how do clubs start winning? Like look at the Melbourne Storm. I know they're the outlier. They're not the norm. But you've got Tyrone Wishart there. You've got Jonah Pezzett. You've got Harry Grant. I reckon all those guys are in their early 20s that could have been playing first grade at weaker clubs 3 or 4 years ago and could have wanted everything. But the standard of excellence there makes them think differently. And obviously they've got Craig Bellamy. They've been winning for 20 years. So they've got a huge advantage in that regard. But how did they create this? I listened to Stefano, who I hate. I can't stand him. I think he's been average this year. He couldn't even make his flight for Origin. So well done. But one quote he said was the difference between the two clubs, and I don't think he was trying to pile on us here, was he was amazed by the amount of selfless players at the Melbourne Storm. Now, that is not, for me, something that is ingrained in them when they go there through the environment that they have. And I don't know how we get that, whether we have to ask some of our coaches to spend a few months at the Melbourne Storm or something. But it's clear that in the top clubs, they can withstand some of this pressure from younger players or keep them. We can't.
Well, what they've created over a generation, right, stems from some outstanding decision-making over those years, all the way back to choosing someone like Craig Bellamy, and then they get the right players into the club. I don't like pumping them up too much because they did get all those players into the club for 4 years because they cheated. Let's not forget that. They seem to want to forget that, but let's not forget the fact they cheated massively for 4 years. But apart from that, they've just made the right decisions time and time again with the right people in the right jobs with the right attitude. And that's how you create that culture. And you're right. People come in and if you are a little bit self-centered and a little bit selfish and a little bit about yourself, then when everyone else around you is not, then you've got to change or leave. It's as simple as that. And they've created that the majority think that way. Like I saw this great thing. I think I've said this before on their wall in the gym is, like talent gets you into this room. Hard work keeps you here, and that's their mindset, right? That everyone works hard. Doesn't matter how talented you are, you work hard, and that's going to rub off on blokes like Stefano. It is. And he'll get better because of it. We don't seem to be able to make those decisions or haven't been able to historically.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the West Tigers podcast. Don't forget, if you agree or disagree, we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on the West Tigers podcast forum. It's free to join and you can contribute directly to the podcast on the forum. Just head to westtigerspodcast.com.au/forum. We hope to see you there soon.
Last one on Richo. Declan, does he need to say more to the members? Because he's been very bullish about members first. And Joel made a good point on Sunday night. He said the goodwill of some of the fans, the rusted on ones, even the diehards, the tide's starting to turn back to that really toxic, negative talk from a couple of years ago where I think Steve made the point Sunday night. You look, our memberships don't automatically cancel and we get refunds with 8 rounds to go. We still have to go to games or support the team. So why are you giving up on the season, but can you maybe, Richo, explain to us a little bit more in detail what the grand plan is without giving up your aces or what your cards are?
Yeah, I think there's that balance. Like at the end of the day, like you could put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig at the end of the day. So with the De Silva situation, like it's just bad. And the Galvin situation, it's just bad. So you can try and spin it however you want. You can communicate to the members however you want, but at the end of the day, it's an L for the club. And I kind of understand how you wouldn't want to jump at every single obstacle to talk to the media or talk to the fans when something bad goes wrong, because then you'd be talking to the fans every single week.
Well, that's what Lee and Pascoe did, and it made
exactly.
It, didn't it?
Yeah, it made it worse because like people just kind of drown out what you're saying at the end of the day, or they don't believe you, and you lose credibility in their eyes. So I can understand that, but at the same time, I can also understand Joe's point of view, where like, what is the strategic decision? Are we still a development club if we've lost all these young local juniors? The Magpies didn't have great seasons in Ishibo, how Matt's this year. Like, what are we doing with that? Like, what's the home ground situation like for, like, after that kind of thing with Campbelltown Council? Like, what's happening there? So I do kind of see where guys like Nick and Joel are coming from, maybe asking from Richardson for a little bit more, but at the same time, I'm not that critical of him, because I think the more he says, the kind of less people listen, if that makes sense.
Look, I think he needs to be a little bit upfront, about what's happening currently. I absolutely don't think he needs to address the question of, are we a development club or not? Of course we are. And this has been the problem with the club in the past, is that we just seem to flip and flop from one strategy to the next so quickly. We've got a strategic plan that was well put together and was publicised, and it's there for everyone to see. And we are a development club, and that's the line in the sand that we need to keep going down. We've forged that path. We need to keep going down that path. Now, if we're not doing well, then we need to do it better. We need to do it at a standard of excellence, right? Not a standard of Joe average. But that is the strategy. That is the strategic direction of the club. And that needs to stay in place. There's no need for that to be questioned or changed. The only question is, are we doing it as well as we can?
Well, I don't know. It's a tough one, because you can't, because it's been like 3 years since like Tim Sheens came out with that speech about how we're a development club. And I accept Eddie's point as well, that it can be seen as kind of a nothing comment, because at the end of the day, like, all clubs recruit and they develop as well. But I don't know, I just think we've kind of lost our way a little bit this season, with Galvin being gone, like De Silva being gone. If you look at most players playing against the Roosters this weekend, like, I don't think any of them are local juniors except maybe Alex Seyfarth.
Yeah, but it's not the strategy. It's not the strategy that's wrong, Declan. It's the execution of the strategy.
That's what I'm saying. I think we've lost our way, though, and I think that's where I would like him to clarify, if that makes sense, and like where potentially we went wrong, because like we have jumped ship a lot, but like the success in the juniors and that kind of pathway from Mats to SG Ball to Flag to Cup to first grade, there's clearly something not working in that development process, because I think at the moment we're bringing in players way too young. And when they show any kind of promise, their contract value gets risen, and then when they have a better option, they just leave. And I'm wondering if we are kind of throwing these players in without opportunity too young, after seeing kind of how Galvin and De Silva manage their contract situations.
Just back to the Chammers article for a minute, Steve, before we preview the game. Benji Marshall and Shane Richardson, we've touched on the last few podcasts whether they maybe need more manpower around, perhaps a general manager of football or different assistant coaches. But the dynamic between them, to me at least, seems like they're still very much aligned, and they're trying 100% in the best interest of the club to make the best decision. Like you said, it's the execution of it. But things in the Chamis article, like, Appy and Jerome are really tight with Benji, like, that's not a revelation. Of course you should be the tightest with your two captains. Like,
it's called a leadership group.
Searching for stuff there.
Oh, absolutely. That's a leadership group, right? Yeah, and the young players have got to suck that up. Like I would have more sympathy, though I didn't really, because I thought it was a whinge, but I'd have more sympathy for the comments made by Clemmer and Bateman last year, when they were saying, if there was validity to them saying, hang on, we've played 100 games as a first grade here, no one's listening to us, and this young bloke who's 18, he's been listened to. I reckon there's more validity in that. But if Benji's having closed-door meetings with Appy and Jerome Luai, then to the people that aren't in that room, tough, because they've earned the right to be in that room.
What do you think? I won't ask you for predictions for the rest of your Declan, but say, we lost every game for the rest of the season. Should that be the end of Benji, or should Benji be under no pressure heading into 2026, given, how tied he is to a lot of this roster?
I think that for me, I would be sticking with him for next season, just essentially for the reasons you just said, because he is so tied to the roster. And if you sack Benji, I think you have to reasonably come to grips with the fact that if you sack him, then players like Luai and players like Terrell will realistically be evaluating their options. Not to say that they will leave, but I think that becomes a reasonable prospect. And then the other part of it is if you sack Benji, who's going to come in and you look at them and say they're a dead set improvement. I could see them doing a really good job, because I don't see anyone at the moment like people were talking about Willie Peters, and maybe I'm just ignorant, but I dead set don't know anything about him. And maybe he'd do a good job, but I'm not sure. The only person that I would be like, yep, I could definitely see why they would do that is if they brought someone like Todd Payton in, who he has kind of that experience as a head coach. He's had success, but then he also has that connection to the club as well. But everyone else is on the market at the moment. I just think you'd kind of be at risk of repeating the kind of old mistakes of hiring a Mick Potter or a Jason Taylor or Michael Maguire, guys who have baggage that they'd bring to the club, and then we'd be making mistakes that we've made in the past. So I'd be definitely giving Benji until next season to turn it around, or to see how it goes. Because if we're still in the same position next season, then it's probably worth the calculated risk that you lose some of these guys. But for now, I don't think it's worth the risk.
One more on the article, Steve, I promise, before I move on, before you hit me over the head with a baseball bat. But and this is speculation. This is Jammer's speculation. So it's not necessarily true, but it's something I've spoken about a few times over a couple of years. I think he's got to be careful with how much he joins in training. I just say that from a point of view. I'm only an assistant coach at a cricket club, but I think there's a line between being an assistant coach and a head coach. And I know you have to be true to who you are. You can't change, who you are. But I just get, if he's joining in at training and he's setting up tries, and then, if he's folding someone like Adam Dewey and then there's a scuffle or there's a verbal altercation after that, that is not a line that a head coach for me is acceptable. And again, I stress, this is speculation out of an article, but I think that's something where he is learning on the run. And there's insinuations there that he wants to be one of the boys, and he was one of the boys when he was a player, Benji. He wasn't necessarily a leader for me. Maybe he did late in his career. But I think that's something that perhaps a senior, experienced assistant coach could talk to him about on the side, which I don't think he has there at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty damning comment that's been thrown around that he just wants to be one of the boys. We don't know that. Everything, when we listen to him in his press conferences, I think he's set himself apart more so this year than he has last year. I think he's heading in the right direction. I will say, I think he's too forgiving of his players publicly anyway. But as far as that line in the sand, look, as long as that line is there, I think your behaviour, what you do is okay. If he gets involved in the ball runs and he tackles Adam Dewey, it's because Adam Dewey stepped the wrong way, or maybe deserved to be tackled. If he can do that and get in and show them how to run plays and this and that, but he can still draw that line in the sand. He can still then pull the player in to his office the next day and give him a golf or tell him his standards aren't what they need to be, or tell him how he's been dropped to reserve grade. This is how he needs to improve, and do that honestly and respectfully and transparently. If he can do all that, then there's nothing wrong. The problem occurs is if he's playing tip with the guys before training and having a great laugh with them, and then because of that, they don't take him seriously and he can't get them to listen to him and do what he says and respect his opinion, then there's a problem. and only those on the field with him know whether that's the case or not.
This is just the problem I have with like people like Chamis, because a statement like that is just so broad. It's impossible to respond to, because like what can Benji possibly do to respond to that? I mean, it's what we said. Yes, he's close to senior players, like every NRL coach would be. I mean, do you reckon Trent Robinson didn't have a really close relationship with Bod Corner and Jadbury, Hargraves, and Jake Friends? Like, of course he does, and that's why they're on the coaching staff. Or like Hargraves is still playing, but he probably will be when he retires. So it's just like rules for different people. Like it just seems, and that like what I said at the start of the pod, like there's plenty to criticize the club about. Like for example, Luai goes out against Manly, and then like the team plays with just no attacking structure like whatsoever. And like we lose the game, we look terrible. Like that is just an objective thing that he could criticize Benji for, because you take one player out of the system and we just look like a spoon team immediately. And that's just not good enough, because like there's plenty of teams that if you take a star player, they should at least be able to follow a structure or attack properly inside the 20 meters, but we just weren't able to. And it just annoys me so much that like the level of journalism is so low that there's plenty of like valid criticisms of the club that they could go with, but they go with these weird like, oh, Benji wants to be one of the boys, but he's not. He's like, doing drills and training. Like, how weird is that? Like, but it's just like, what are you doing? There's so much more that you could be saying that actually is nuanced and makes sense and is probably more valid, but they just don't for some reason.
Fair points, Declan. Steve, it's such, before I move on to the Roosters game, it's such fine margins. Like I was thinking tonight, like if Galvin hadn't dropped the ball over the line against South, and if Buller hadn't been held up by a illegal tackle against Penrith, we would have 7 wins. And you know who else has got 7 wins this year? The Roosters and the Panthers. They're both on 7 wins. And you know who's on 8 wins? The team that spends 50 million or something on their whatever on that scale of things, where West Tigers was 17th, the Broncos. So it's really fine margins, and we're getting hammered at the moment. And unfortunately, that is the reality. When you lose 6 games in a row and you're coming off 3 wooden spoons, it's easy to hammer them. And I think some of the stuff we're getting hammered for is probably fair enough. But geez, it's fine margins. Like if we were on 7 wins, 2 of those 5 losses that were under 6 points, the talk this week would be a battle for the top 8 with the Roosters.
Mate, that's a great point, and I honestly don't know where on earth you would have heard that, apart from me on the pod 2 weeks ago. You said the exact same thing: drop ball over the line and a tackle 1 meter short, half a meter short of the line, and we're 4 points ahead. Yeah, it is. A season could have looked so differently, but again, we've got to take responsibility for it. And at the end of the day, we're showing that we don't know how to win, and we've got to learn how to win.
I feel like I'm the Eddie of this podcast, because I just like that. Like I completely agree with all that stuff about close losses, and then like if we just got like the bounce of the ball or the call of a referee, and that's great. But for me, that went all completely undone when we went to Brookville Oval and just played absolutely terribly. Because yes, like it's all well and good to lose closely to the good teams, but then when you play the bad teams and you play like your worst game of the season ever, for me, you just lose like all credibility that, if we were a little bit luckier, we'd be in the top 8 or like pushing for the top 8. Because no, these are the games that we always play every season and we always lose, and it's just not good enough. And yes, there were some reasons for that, like Buller going down, Jerome going down. That's 2 really important spine players, probably 2 of our 3 best players. So I'm not necessarily annoyed that they lost. It's more the manner they lost, and just that the pressure got to them and they just played terribly and ruined my Friday night as well at the same time.
Who would have thought, Steve, I'd be the positive one on the podcast? Maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate in my role as host, but I do think that, unfortunately, the bad sides all have sob stories. Like the Dragons have lost 3 games by a point, and unfortunately, it's like Declan said, it's because you don't know how to win those close games. And a couple of those close games were infuriating for me, because I don't think South and North Queensland were going any good, and I think we should have beaten them. But let's talk about the Roosters game. 2:00 this Sunday at Allianz Stadium. Steve, I'm meant to be going to this game because I have friends that are Roosters fans, and I feel like saying to them, look, I'd be happy to go to any rugby league game except for the Roosters and versus the Tigers because we have lost 18 of our last 19 against the Roosters, 30 of 39 overall. Before we get into the teams, is there any reason for optimism this week? It's a much changed team. It's pretty much the bare bones.
Well, if I was to put my optimist hat on, yeah, there is. If you look at, and not so much you look at our team, like we've been hit for six with injuries and representation, that sort of thing. But so have the Roosters. The Roosters team, their backline's pretty strong.
12 first
Not
graders
bad.
out, apparently. 12 first graders out of the Roosters side, apparently.
Yeah.
I know you read their backline and it's still a lot better than ours.
Yeah, they've still got
Tedesco
Tedesco and Tupou and I can't even say that bloke's name. The centre is just doing good things.
But I'll read their forward pack. Sorry, Steve, to interrupt. This is their forward pack. Nafahu White, who's a good player. Ioli, or whatever. I've got no idea what his name is. Sorry, the hooker. Makatoa, never heard of him. Front row. Egan Butcher, back row. Fogarty, back row, never heard of him. Steep, I think is a good young player. The lock, but hasn't played much. And the bench, Docker Clay, journeyman. McCarthy, never heard of him. Lasalu, never heard of him. And VAR. And apologies for butchering about 6 of those names, but that is an absolute no-name. Like, they are decimated in the forwards, but like there's a lot of talk about us having Luai and Appy and Buller out, and it probably means a lot more when you're a bad side and you don't have much depth, but they are missing a stack.
Yeah, I think our forward pack lines up a lot stronger than theirs, which gives us the foundations of doing good things on Sunday. There's no reason that we can't win the ruck on the weekend if we go and believing that we can do that. Now, we've got to hold Tedesco, we've got to hold Tupou. Like, for crying out loud, if he scores a try coming over the top of someone from a kick, I'm going to scream because we know we're weak at that. We've been weak at it for 10 years. Right? Can we please do something at training this week to stop him from scoring tries off kicks? But if we can do that, if we can win the ruck and hold Tedesco and get up on their halves, we're capable of winning this game, even though we are depleted as well.
Declan, what are your thoughts on the game? Can we win?
Sorry, I don't think so. I think that the Roosters, even though they don't have a lot of players available, you just know that they'll play to their capability, and he'll get the best. Like, Robinson will get the best out of those young players. I think they've been doing it all season. Like, there's so many guys in that team that I just hadn't really heard of before this season, but the Roosters are so good at just developing these young players along, and I think that this will be. I think they'll play well. I'm a huge fan of the halfback, Savala. He's a really good player. I don't really know a lot about the forward pack, but I think that I thought that we had a huge advantage against Manly in the forwards last week, and that just didn't eventuate to anything. So who knows what they're going to bring. But also, there's probably not much expectation on us as well because we did lose that game against Manly. So maybe that will take some of the pressure off and we play better. But yeah, I'm not confident at all.
Steve, lots of changes to the West Tigers team. Let's go through the 1 to 5 and the changes. Taruva goes to fullback, Staines onto the wing, and Luke Lalili to centres. What do you like out of that?
Well, Taruva at fullback, I think it's okay. Staines, I was pretty critical of Staines early in the season. I've got to say, he proved me wrong. With the opportunities he's had in first grade, he's actually brought the ball back out of trouble quite well. So I think we'll get, I know we'll get 100% effort from him. Toa, I think is a great football skelton. I think that is, really advantageous for us. Brings the ball back hard. Now, Lily in the centres is an unknown for me. Apparently, he's played there a few times, but nothing significant. So we're weakened a little bit, but it's still a decent back five.
Your man Declan, he's back at 6 where he belongs, Anandui.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone said in the group chat, I think we were just going so bad against Manly that when he moved to 6, he just looked like our best player, which kind of showed exactly why we were struggling. I don't know. I think it's it's a safe option because I think like he's probably got the highest floor in terms of the potential options. Like you kind of know what you're going to get from him. Like whether it actually leads to points, I'm not sure. I'm also a little bit concerned as well because that article from Chamis that mentioned Adam Dewey. Adam Dewey's now contracted to Isaac Moses. So is he leaking stuff? Does that like mess with the dynamic of the team? I don't know. I have very low expectations of it, but I will say that I do like Luke Lilly at center though. I think that's probably his like a really good position for him at the moment while he does try and develop his ability under the high ball, and it kind of brings out all the stuff he is good at. So I'll be interested to see how he goes in that respect. But yeah, just morale is very low at the moment, in case you were wondering, and I'm just like, we're just at that point of the season, I think.
Forward pack is pretty much intact, Steve, except for obviously no Appy and no Talon de Silva. So, welcome back to first grade Tristan Hope.
Yeah, well, he's just got to play a simple game. Let's be honest. He's not a first grade player. He's a reserve grade player that can fill in when needed, I suppose, would be the nicest way to describe him. He's just got to play a very simple game. He's got to give good, clean, fast ball to his forwards. The thing that concerns me most with Hope at 9 and also having Fainu sort of still beginning his journey at 7 is just the organisation. Who's going to be talking? I suppose it's going to come a lot down to Dewey. I remember early in the year, I don't know if it was a trial or I think it was a trial, Dewey played 5'8", and I think Galvin was playing halfback, and they played out of their skins. And Dewey, you could see that Dewey was just helping Galvin, sort of mentoring him on the run on the field, and it brought out the best in both of them. So I'm hoping, so they're going to have 80 minutes together, that Dewey and Fainu can sort of click like that. I think Fainu will have to run a lot, use a lot his individual skill, to create opportunities for us. So you'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Benny Elias Declan, I'm not going to let him get away with this. He said, and I'm digressing here, but he said, Talon de Silva's already the 6th best hooker in the game. I thought, what a load of dribble. Like, honestly, I think Talon's going to be a really good player. But he said his defence has been spot on. Like, he just obviously doesn't watch the games. He's just clickbait, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see Benny Elias's list so that we could probably examine it a little bit closer. But yeah, it's just a strange. I think we're the only club where we just get a lot of heat from the ex-players. Like, I know the Broncos went through it as well when they were doing badly, but it's just a particular kind of cross the Tigers have to bear. And obviously, Elias, he's paid for his opinion. And the more he says crazy stuff like this, the kind of more attention he gets, which is ultimately good for his media reputation. But yeah, I just disagree with that wholeheartedly, because he's not even the most minutes that Talon played this season correlated in our highest losses with the Storm, and then also Manly. And I'm not saying that's Talon's fault, but he definitely has a lot to work on before you'd even consider him as a first grade starting hooker. So yeah, I'm not sure what Elias is talking about there.
He was obviously a great player, Benny Elias, but I don't think he was even a fan of the club, Steve. I'm sorry, and he's not an ex-player of the club. He's an ex-player of Balmain, and the way he talks, I just think it's pathetic. The way some of those ex-players, you call them ex-players, but
he got his chance, Ben Elias, this year, didn't he? He sort of came back into the fold, and was supposed to be going to be incredibly supportive, but it didn't last long.
No, it didn't. The bench, Steve, we've got Charlie Murray, Alex Seyfarth, Sione Fainu and Tony Suka. I'd be a little bit surprised if Benji doesn't push Sione back to starting. I didn't think that worked last week with Pole starting, because Sione had been going great guns that first 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I think Fainu should start. I think he's one of our most improved and also most consistent players all year. So definitely would start him. Pole coming off the bench will be good. I think Seyfarth, this is the best spot for him if he's going to be in the 17, is to come off the bench and play in the middle. He's not going to bring a whole lot of impact, but he will do a job. I think our 4 interchange players sort of match up pretty favourably with their interchange. I don't think they're going to have any more impact when they come on for their team to what ours are going to. It'll come down to how well Murray and Suka play, I think. I think we know what we're going to get from Fainu and Seafard. It's whether Murray and Suka can hold their own when they come on and play.
Jack Bird on the edge, Declan. I mean, it's hard for Benji because if he drops Bird back to the bench, they'll say, well, he's had 3 back rows in 3 weeks. But I kind of think at some point this year, maybe Tony Suka might get a go on that edge.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Bird starting in the back row. Like, I can see in theory like why you think that, but I think he just doesn't really have the physicality that those back rowers require, especially the way we're playing, where like the back rower needs to be able to like have a head up, and I just don't think Bird's carry is where it needs to be starting in the forward pack. And I actually think Sukar has like greatly like surpassed my expectations of how he played this season, and I thought he played quite well. So I just don't see why, like, if like we're struggling with injury, then I don't see why they wouldn't play him. But yeah, I'm sure there's maybe like a technical reason. Maybe it's the wrong side of the field that he's used to playing in. They're a little bit worried about that. And plus, Bird has that bit of experience. But yeah, I would be starting Suker because I don't think that Bird's got the kind of attributes that are required to start in the forward pack at the moment.
All right, boys. Well, stranger things have happened. I got on Sunday night. I said I'm convinced this would be 50 or 60. I've changed my mind on this. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I think this will be a battle this game, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to ask you guys. The only thing, you look at we're bringing Murray in the 17, and we've got Suka. I suppose Suka's doing okay, but why is Kitlau Lily not getting a run or not getting a chance? He just seems to like he's in the 21.
It's only something you could answer, Steve. I assume if you're in the 4 walls of Concord, because my mate who watches State Cup said, the games he has played, he always provides an impact. But it just seems like Declan is not a player that Benji trusts at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, even when he was on the bench for us, he didn't get any game time. So there's got to be something to it. I've heard some like mixed reviews about Kit and Cup. Like I think he had a really good like 3-4 weeks, but then he's kind of backed it up with 2 like kind of poor games. So, but I haven't seen this with my own eyes, so I'm not gonna like comment on that. But yeah, it's strange because when I saw him in the Bulldogs trial when he started, he played really well. I thought that he was gonna definitely add impact, but yeah, there must be something that the coaching staff isn't happy with.
I didn't see reserve grade Steve, but apparently Royce Hunt had a good game. So I was kind of looking at the bench thinking maybe we could do with him. But again, I go back to trust and goodwill and maybe how players train, and I can only assume he's still in the bad books.
Well, it must be about standards. Like Benji has said that all year. You've got to meet the standards. If you don't meet the standards, you're not playing. But gee, we could do with his impact at the moment. That's for sure. And I was talking to Gary, who went out to the reserve grade game on the weekend, and he said Hunt had a great game in reserve grade and played some decent minutes. So yeah, it's a pity because we could do with him this weekend.
Quiz time, boys. It's a multiple choice question 1. What is our longest winning streak against the Roosters, Declan? Is it A1, B2, C3, or D4?
I'm gonna go 4. Be optimistic.
Steve?
I was reading the team sheet, mate, so I didn't even hear the question, so I'll say C.
Well, C is correct, Steve. It's the old theory of multiple choice, isn't it? When in doubt, go C. That was my theory in high school. It passed me a lot of exams. So
Awesome. 1-0. We out of time?
Steve, question 2. True or false? The last time West Tigers had a half-time lead against the Roosters was in a season we made the top 8, Declan.
False.
True.
It is false. And I was at this game in 2018. We led 2-0 at halftime. That was the round 1 game where Tui Lolohea kicked a penalty goal before halftime. He also kicked a sideline conversion to win us that game 8-6. That was in James Tedesco's first game for the Roosters. So that was one of the rare, very memorable moments West Tigers have had.
Is that all written down? Is that all written down, Eddie, or is that your memory?
It's just old memory, yeah.
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 That's pretty good.
People say I always bring up the bad times, Steve, but I like to bring up the good times as well. Question 3. Against which 2 clubs did Jason Lowry, remember, you probably weren't alive, Declan, he was bald-headed Kiwi front rower back in the early 2000s, late 90s. Against which 2 clubs did Jason Lowry score his 2 and only rugby league tries against? Hint, both were scored during his West Tigers career. One of them was in the year 2000. One of them was in the year 2001. I'll give you guys a clue. One of them was against a team that no longer exists. Half of their body still exists, but it's a different name.
Oh,
The
the Northern,
Illawarra Steelers.
Other merger.
the Northern Eagles.
Northern Eagles, Declan. I remember it. His first try, and this is written down, Steve, round 10, 2000 was out at Gosford. And his second try, I was at this game, round 3, 2001 at Campbelltown. It was against the New Zealand Warriors. Game 142 tries, 142 games, Declan, before he scored his first try. So that's more than Twal, isn't it?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well,
I think you're right.
I think Twal got his first one. Maybe it was 100 games in. Not that I care. Question 4. Nearest to the pin. As of the end of last season, what is the average ladder position, our average ladder position, at the completion of the regular season? I mean, you'd think this would be horrible. I'm giving you a little clue here, but there were a lot of Tim Sheen's years where this side loved to run, just below mid-table. So average ladder position, Declan?
It was 11th.
I'll say 12th.
Yeah, Declan was spot on. He took your money there, Steve. He got 11th.
I was going to say 11.
Yeah. Who am I? And I'll give you a clue, boys. None of you are going to get this. That's the clue you're going to get. So I'll read it out anyway for our listeners. I was born in Auckland in 1982. I debuted for the Broncos in the year before our club's maiden premiership. So that would be 2004. I played 25 games there, scoring 15 tries in 3 years. I signed with our 2006 World Club Challenge opponents. I think that was Bradford. For 2 years. Returned in the NRL in mid-2009 with our West Tigers. I failed to make any appearances that season. I was touted as our Taniela Tuiaki replacement prior to the Lottie Takiri signing. I retired at the end of 2010, again playing no NRL games due to constant injuries. My name is Tame Tupou. And Steve, I can't, even though I've got a good memory, I don't remember Tame Tupou.
No, I got nothing.
Declan, what are you doing for the game this week? Have you, like me, have you sort of quit going to games, even though I'm going this week? I shouldn't say that, but are you enthusiastic to go to any games before the end of the season?
Look, not really. I think I'll be hiding behind the couch. It seems like more of a chore. I've been really negative this podcast. I really should try and be more positive. But yeah, look, I think it's exactly what you said. It's just the Roosters. They just, like, a lot of teams beat us, like, throughout these years. But the Roosters, they just really beat us, don't they? Like, they just absolutely have the wood over us more than any other team. But, we have to be positive. And yeah, like, it's actually a really good ground as well. Allianz. So,
yes or no, Declan?
No.
I don't even remember the question I answered. What was it?
No, I will not be watching it. No, I will be, obviously. Yeah, but I'll just be having my eyes closed and probably turn it off at halftime. But yeah, I'll still try and watch.
Steve, you are quite vociferous Sunday about, and rightly so, memberships don't get cancelled 3/4 of the way through the season. How many games do you reckon you're going to go to until the end of the year? We do have 2 of our 3 at Leichhardt, which is something I'm looking forward to.
Oh yeah, I'll go to all our home games for sure. I'm not decided about this Sunday yet. I just don't want to end up out at the ground and just angry at 20 minutes into the game and fuming because we're so poor. But I think I'll probably end up. I'll do what I usually do. I'll say I'm not going to go. Then Sunday morning I get up, I'll put my gear on and I go. So we'll see.
All right, boys, thank you for tonight. And Declan, I think that's what happens when you're not on a podcast for a few weeks. You've pent up all that anger and you let it out tonight. So I thought you were our man of the match tonight. I thought you were outstanding.
Thank you.
That says a lot for me. There's only 2 of us.
All right, see you, boys.
Yeah,
Cheers,
thank
guys.
you.